everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of Step Into the Pivot. We are so happy to have you here again. Today's guest is Heather Fox. So, Heather, welcome. I'm happy to have you. Evie and I are happy to have you here.
Thank you. It is an absolute pleasure to be here with both of you today.
Awesome. So, we don't really read people's bios when we start the introduction. But I love a few things that are in your bio where you've been most accurately and consistently described as a blend of James Bond and Mary Poppins. So I'm excited to hear a little more about that. But I really love that you talk about peeling back the layers, the beliefs, the societal norms, clearing the inferences so you can discover your soulful path. That really spoke to me. So I'm really excited for this conversation. So Evie, I'll let you kind of do a little more in depth.
Well, I'm so excited for the conversation because Heather, you're such a dear friend, and we haven't had a chance to connect in a while. And I just feel like maybe we have a bit of that like one-on-one, like we normally do, in front of an audience and in front of my other really dear friend with whom I haven't had a chance to connect. So,
I
so
love
this is
it.
so exciting. And you know, I know a lot about you, and I know a lot about many, many, many pivots that you've been through. They have varied from some really significant life events that, one wouldn't wish upon anyone to some self-induced pivots where you were like, this ain't working, so I'm going to change it. So I'm going to cause a pivot and anything and everything in between. So, what I would like to do right now is just ask you basically, how are you in front of everybody? How are you doing? And as we're thinking about, your life, what would you say today, snapshot in time, is one of these massive lessons that you are thinking about that's coming up for you today? Like, what is something that happened to you that shaped you the most that is relevant today? And let's just start there. So, how are you, Heather? And what are you thinking about today?
Oh my gosh, I am doing well, and the timing of this podcast and the questions is so perfect because one of my biggest pivots that I'll share with you is actually something that I'm just realizing how core it was in my life. So in today's world, in the moment now, I've been really focusing on expanding my capacity to hold the pressures that come with being a business owner, with being a mother, with being just a woman, an entrepreneur, taking care of ourselves as we age. So I'm working on expanding the capacity to hold the pressures, expanding the capacity to receive love, visibility, money, affection, additional clients. And so through all of this, I've been practicing expanding the capacity. But in hindsight, I realized it was actually the collapse, which was my divorce, 8 years ago. That was I'll say, like, the jumping board to getting, or the launch pad to get to where I am today. And so through the work that I'm doing today about expanding, I realize how grateful I am for my divorce, even though it was absolutely soul crushing and took, I felt like at the time it took the absolute life out of me. And so when I look back at the divorce, just to give you a little bit of context, it's really was the catalyst for the collapse of everything in my life. And so when I was in the midst of the divorce, I also, because of the divorce, had to close my business at the time. And because I had to close my business and was getting divorced and I was a single mom, I had to go back to the corporate world, which was my plan B, it was my backup plan, but no one ever wants to execute their backup plan. And so all of these things started collapsing. I lost my marriage. I lost, my business. I'm back to where I was. I'm now a single mom, which I grew up Catholic. So being a divorced single mom, I was absolutely embarrassed and humiliated and felt like a disgrace. And so everywhere I looked, my image, my identity, the financial income, my status, Even when you go to the doctor's office and you have to check married, single, divorced, I mean, every time I was just like, felt like absolute failure. And so I just saw my life collapsing everywhere around me. And to the point where I went from having the perfect life on paper, the marriage, the business, the ideal house, and the ideal neighborhood, to having nothing. I had $0 in my wallet. I had one credit card that had a $10,000 cap max, and I rebuilt my life on this $10,000 credit card. But everything around me, like the doors just kept slamming, and it was like when I looked around, I had nothing left that I knew for my life. And so nothing looked familiar, and my friends weren't the same. And there was a moment, it's a very distinct moment, when I was standing in the kitchen. I moved out of the marital home. I rented a brand new townhome, but the townhome was super, super cheap. So the floors felt like plastic. The cabinets were cheap. It was just cheap. And I remember just standing in the kitchen, and I kind of accidentally like slammed the kitchen door. You know how you close it, but it slams? So I didn't intend to slam it, but it slammed shut. And like that was the moment like that I had so much anger because I was used to soft close doors in my house. And so we had soft close cabinets, soft close drawers. And like in that moment, I realized like nothing in my life is soft close anymore. Everything is slamming shut. And so I was just fueled with this anger and frustration. And I was like, I can't move forward with this, right? And so what I decided to do, and this was one of the like little micro shifts in this collapse, was that I decided that every time I slammed the door shut, because it happened more often than not, right? Just out of habit, you flip the door shut, slam shut, and you're like, oh my gosh. And so I decided that every time it slammed shut, I would just say thank you, because I knew it was another layer gone. So it was like, thank you, thank you. Another friend left the picture, thank you. Another, someone making a comment about how I should have stayed in the marriage. I was like, thank you. All these layers being removed. I was just like, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And so that entire collapse brought me back to my truth. So it was kind of like the unnecessary kick in the butt from the universe of like, hey, wake up. And so I had nothing left. I had no money. I had no friends. I had nothing except I had my truth. And I was like, okay, if I have my truth, I can rebuild from here. And so that was what I did.
I love the way you put that together, honestly, because it really is true. Like Evie started by saying, right, like that sometimes pivots come to us that we don't know, and sometimes we create them on our own, right? A divorce is something you kind of created on your own, right? Like because it was best for you. But I love how you talk about slamming that door shut and moving, that really to me speaks to how you kind of move to the next thing and say goodbye to this old stuff. So I don't know, that's what really spoke to me when you were talking about that. So that's
Hmm.
amazing.
Yeah, I think you're being, Heather, also very gracious telling the story. I happen to know some of the details of what all went into it. And so I could see how much, strength and training, internal and external, went into this, decision, and now the capability to say, thank you. I see it all with gratitude going backwards. I was starting to see it with gratitude back then, but I know that there were a lot of moments that happened that were like, I can't believe this is happening. I can't
Yeah.
believe this is happening. And I think this is, for the most part, that is how people move through experiences like that. I can't believe he did that. Oh my God, I can't believe he did that. And it's so understandable, so justifiable. But from what you're sharing, it's not going to really help you with that rebuilding, with the reshaping, and with the peace. I mean, you seem to have a lot of peace about this now.
Yeah, I think like I was in the midst of it, and I was just like, okay, if we're gonna walk through this fire, like bring it on. Everything's
Yeah.
already collapsing. So there was this part of me that I was just like, let's see what I'm made of.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
just if I'm going to go through this
Yeah.
awful experience, I just wanted it to all be gone. And so I was very conscious in every unjust thing that continued to happen, that in all the books, all the law books, it should never be able to happen. And as they continued to happen, I was just like, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And I meant it. It wasn't just in my mind to try to bypass the crappiness that was happening. It was truly an embodiment, because I knew it was another layer shedding, another layer shedding. And I just thought, okay, I thought I was done. I'm not done. Let's shed it. Let's shed it. Let's shed it. Let's shed it and shed it and shed it and shed it and shed it. And it was
And
just this anchored embodiment of getting to the core of who I actually am for the first time in my life.
well, I was going to say, sometimes you have to shut those doors to be able to move forward or figure out what the right path is, or whatever that looks like for you. You sometimes have to shut those doors. I mean, I don't know. To me, that just is true. Sometimes I just have to walk away.
Hmm. Exactly. So you started by talking about capacity and that you're thinking about this today. How does it serve you today to think about the
Yeah.
divorce and the big change and the change in your capacity as a result?
So the it will I'll continue to expand on that just a little bit, and then if I don't come back to your question, let make sure I come back. But the next piece of what I did, so I really had this, the divorce was the collapse, or the initiator of the collapse of my life at the time. And then I got to the point where the anger really set in. So while I was shedding the layers, I was angry about life. And I was angry because I thought I did everything people told me to do to have the life that I desired, and I did it. So I felt like I did my part. I showed up. And the interesting thing is I did have the life on paper. I had the success on paper, but I was miserable. And so, but I was angry. And so that really put me, what I realized about myself is I caught myself saying, why me? Why is this happening to me? What did I do to deserve this? Like, this doesn't make any sense. And it put me in a victim mentality underneath it all. So even though I was taking responsibility, underneath energetically, I was floating in this victim mentality. Why is this happening to me? And it felt like I was completely out of control. And there was a moment in this same cheap townhome kitchen, I feel like the becoming of me became in this kitchen, because I was standing in this kitchen and I was livid. I was so angry at life that and the voice in my head was getting louder and louder. And even, this voice I now named Sheila. And she took on a life of her own, and she would run her mouth and she would be like, you're such a stupid blonde. You should have seen this coming. Why didn't you do this? If you would have done this, and this is your fault, blah, blah, blah. And the voice got louder and louder and louder. And there was this moment that I could not take it anymore. And I said to myself out loud, it's me by myself in my kitchen talking to this crazy voice in my head. And I just said, shut up, shut up, shut up. Like, I couldn't handle the voice anymore. And in that moment, it created just enough separation between this voice that had full control and me. It was a pause that, in hindsight, it's now the divine, like, I could clearly see there's a divine intervention, because I heard the words, now what? And now what? So even if all of these things are unjust, even if all these things are happening to you, even if all this is true, even blah, 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 now what? All of a sudden, it gave zero power to what was happening circumstantially. And it shifted me energetically into my own power. From why me to now what? Now what are you going to do? That's all that really matters. What are you going to make this story mean? It doesn't erase or make the past okay, but what it did is it shifted me out from a victim frequency to, it brought me back into my internal power. And so that was like a key distinct moment of, now I had my truth and now I have my internal power. And so I thought, okay, from this part I can do anything, right? And so it really anchored in that internal power. And it was really the first time in my life that I had really felt that. Because up until then, I was just doing what I thought I was supposed to do, doing what I was told was the right thing to do or the appropriate thing to do. Or if you want to climb the corporate ladder, if you want to be the perfect mom, if you want to be the perfect wife, fit in this box. And so it was this new sensation of, wait a minute, I actually have a voice. I just haven't used it.
I love everything about that. Like everything about that because what you said is absolutely true in so many ways, right? We all have that crazy voice, but I love how you shifted the why me because we all have those why me moments. Why is this happening? Why? Like just why? And moving that forward for yourself, I think says so much. And sometimes like I always say, like our past is important, right? Our past absolutely is because we wouldn't be where we are or who we are today without it. But I hope that we can always learn from it to get out of the why me or why did I do this to move to that next step. That's how I view that. So I truly love everything you just said. So
You reminded me of something too. I forgot that when I was grappling with some of my own demons like this, because we bonded over finding out in a training class that we both lived through a divorce and then had little kids and needed to rebuild ourselves completely. Because as a result of the divorce, we lost, this, of course, the identity, like what you were talking about, but also from a material standpoint, it was like, no, $0 in the wallet. And, now what? I forgot that I was using so what. That was very helpful to me because, and then we talked about that, but yeah, it's been a while. So because, these things, when you transcend them, you don't really go back and think about it. You don't think about it anymore when you're, so, but sometimes you can look back with gratitude for some of these tools. And the tool for me was, so what? But it wasn't a judgmental so what. It was, okay, this happened and this doesn't work and this wasn't right and victim this and victim that and judge this and judge that. So
so
what?
what?
Yeah.
What are you going to do about it now? How about now? How does this serve me? So now a kinder, gentler question I ask is, so how did this serve me? So when you look at what you've built and created and where you're growing today, what's going on? Where are the, benefits basically showing up in your life today as a result of this
Yeah, so
massive
exactly what you
experience?
said. I realized after this I had to rebuild differently. And the other interesting thing, I didn't really know how to rebuild because I've always lived the life I had. And so I wanted this freedom, I wanted this spaciousness, and but I didn't crave the rebellion, right? It wasn't like, oh, I can go date whoever I want and do all these things, but I wanted my own money to be mine. I wanted my own decisions to be mine. I wanted my space to be mine. And so I did that for a while and it felt good, but it didn't have any framework to hold it, the spaciousness. And so I realized that in my rebuilding, I had to create boundaries. And the way that I look at that is really the architecture of how am I going to design my life? Like, what is the architecture of my life so that life can flow through it? And that was really looking to see what are those boundaries, right? So if it stretched me to the point of the collapse, it was a no. If someone's energy drained me, it was a no. If I had to cut off a part of me to fit into your world, it was a no. And so I just started to play with it. I gave myself permission. I don't know how to rebuild this, but I know what I did in the past isn't going to work. So I'm just going to give myself the freedom to try and see how is this. And so today, like I having those boundaries, having that framework has really provided me the like freedom, and it has come with responsibility because it's like I'm also responsible for how I hold those boundaries, and I'm also take responsibility that the people that I lost in my life, it's not really their fault because I'm the one that changed. And so taking responsibility in different ways because I lost a lot of people in my life, but at the end of the day, I wasn't truthfully myself. I was this I was putting on this performance to fit into a certain lifestyle. So I realized like I can't actually be mad at them because I'm the one that changed and I have to take responsibility for that.
Well, I was going to say two things. One is that like what you did was brave, right? So don't discount the bravery part of it. But I also feel strongly that sometimes people are in our life for a short period of time for a reason, and
Mm-hmm.
then they move on, right? You may have people in your life forever, like that's totally true. But I sometimes feel that people are only in our life for a time to teach us. Like, yes, you do take responsibility for that. And sometimes it's you who changes and not them. And sometimes it's them who change and you need to move on from them. But that's to me part of life. I mean, I don't know. I feel strongly about that. I mean, maybe you feel differently, but I think that that's totally true.
It ebbs and flows. Yeah. So to tie it back to the capacity, I want to land the plane on the capacity. Um, the where it's showing up in my life is so even with my ex-husband, there still continues to be challenges. There still continues to be the same battles that were always there. The difference is like how can I hold the capacity? How can I hold the pressure of what's going on over here without collapsing over here? Because before these things would pop up and it would activate all of this old stuff of like the fear of I'm going to lose money, I'm going to lose this, I'm going to lose this, da 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 da, and I would collapse into this and I could not hold the development of my life. I couldn't hold my career. I couldn't be present for my daughter. And so, where I expand the capacity is holding the capacity for the discomfort over here, allowing it. I'm not dismissing it. It's real. It's there. I do need to address it. I'm choosing to address it. Like I could just ignore it and roll over and let him have his way with life. So I'm choosing to engage. I'm choosing to be in my truth, but it also requires me to hold the pressure. And so doing that while still building the business. And can I still show up to be a present mom? And can I still show up to grow my business and not let this crumble me? And holding the pressure to expand my offers, expand the clientele that I work with, and to do all that. So as I'm right now, the practice for me is expanding my capacity to hold more of life, even when life isn't exactly as I would like it to be, staying in my internal power, staying aligned with the boundaries that actually give me the architecture to be free, right? They're really the sovereignty, I guess is the word I'm looking for. They create the sovereignty. And so it's the constant practice, and it's so interesting because as I get, I think we get waves where we're like, okay, I'm ready for more, I'm ready for more. And then the more comes in and I was like, that isn't exactly the way I was hoping the more would come in, but it's like, okay, can you expand the capacity to hold this? And so I feel like right now I'm in this space of constantly being tested because I'm asking, I want to have a greater impact on the world. Well, with that, there's more people, there's more stuff that comes up, more challenges, more hurdles you have to overcome. And if I want to have a greater impact, do I also have the capacity to hold the things that come with it that aren't so pleasant? And so
Mhm.
I just feel that is my focus, and it's a constant. I feel like the universe is like, here's more, and I'm like, whew, okay, we can do this. Back to the
I
basics.
am curious about from a granular perspective, what are some of the things you are doing specifically to nurture yourself, to resource yourself so that you can have that capacity? Because, you talked about the divine intervention moment where you say to your big egoic wounded voice, shut up. And how do you keep creating that separation from the woundedness that will still inevitably show up? What are some of the things that you're doing to support yourself, like really granularly?
Yeah. So I have some non-negotiables in my life. One of those is I work out every morning, and that is where I ask myself what gunk, right? So I feel like we detox when we sleep, and so mentally I'm like, okay, where's the gunk? Is any new gunk come up? Thoughts that aren't true, interferences. And I just see them for what they are. And I literally ask the divine or any of the angels that come to me to help clear them. Let's clear them, let's clear them, let's clear them. And then I anchor back into my truth. And I do this while I'm walking. So I envision that the energy is moving, the thoughts are moving. And then I am able to connect back into my truth. Like I call in my truth. So I ask, like, what am I not seeing? What is my truth? What am I not hearing? What am I missing? And I just open as I walk. There's no headphones. I'm just walking to be reminded of who I am until I can feel it. Because it's one thing to be like, oh yeah, this is true, that's true. It's like, no, can I open up my body? Like sometimes I literally push my shoulders back, expand my heart. Can I actually feel the love I have for myself? Can I actually feel my mission here on earth? Can I actually feel my like gifts? Can I feel them and expand them? And some days I feel like it's this tiny little pinhole is all I can feel, you know, everything's contracted, but I just do what I can with what I have in that day. And then some days when I can feel it, I'm like, okay, expand it out further, further, further. I want to feel it through my entire body. So that is a non-negotiable. I do that every single day. And then, oh gosh, I just had something. I just lost it. There was something with the practicality. It'll come back to me. So that is one of them. Oh, it's like on the tip of my tongue. Oh, thank you. Because what happens is then I kind of get stressed out. So I've asked for more, so there's more things coming my way, and then I'll get overwhelmed. And I catch myself stressed out and overwhelmed. I was like, hold on, you asked for this. But it doesn't change the fact that I feel stressed out and overwhelmed. So what I've done is in those moments, I've slowed down, way down, to the point where Sheila's like, we got stuff to do, girlfriend, keep moving. And I was like, nope. So I slow down, and in the tiny little moments, I expand them. What I mean by that is I might pour myself a glass of water and I stare out the window and drink the water and actually feel the water and taste the water and look out at the snow or the flowers or whatever's out my window, right? I just take it in. And when I take just a moment and I expand it, and then I take another moment and expand it, and I bring in joy, I realize I start to rewrite how I was just feeling and start to rewrite the past, because my mind will be like, you don't have time to be present with your daughter. You don't have time to sit down and eat a meal. You don't have time to do your hair. You don't. And I'm like, hold on. It doesn't actually take that much time. 5 minutes to connect with my daughter after school. She's happy as can be. It's nourishing for me. It's 5 minutes. And I just created and etched in a moment, a memory with her. Like something funny happened, or we played a card game, and I just created a memory. So then what happens is I've now slowed down time, and I've had these little pockets of joy. And I've created these little memories. And then current Heather self, when she looks back on the recent history, I do have time. Life is like joyful, and there's I'm happy, and there's like connectedness. And then instead of this how things used to be, if I don't have time, I'm like, I actually do have 5 minutes. In 5 minutes, I can make a memory that lasts a lifetime. And in 5 minutes, I can nourish my body and like have a beautiful meal and watch the birds out the backyard and like reset and have clarity. And so when I slow down and then add joy into the moments, I start to rewrite the thought that I don't have time, I can't even think clearly because I just proved otherwise. So that is something, and then that expands my capacity, because then at the end of the day, I look at it and I'm like, oh my gosh, I played a new game with my daughter. We went for a walk. We laughed at the dogs in the backyard. We made a meal together. We put a puzzle together while we were eating dinner. I was able to take a 5-minute phone call from a friend, where before I'd been like, I don't have time to answer because I only have 5 minutes, instead of like, I have 5 minutes. I would love to hear your voice. I only have 5 minutes, but I'd love to hear your voice. And we talked for 5 minutes, and I had like clarity come through. So I was able to whip out some work stuff in a couple of minutes that I'm like, oh my gosh, this post came through or whatever. I'm just going to share it with the world. And then when I look back at my day, I'm like, I expanded capacity because I actually lived in every moment.
Absolutely. And I was going to say, I love also your reset, right? And reset can look like so many different things for different people. But that capacity. Yeah. Evie, I know
I
you
was
have
just
something good to
gonna
say. Yeah.
add, I was just gonna add here that the when you do this and then you look back on a weekly basis, then you can really see it. It's not a massive measurement. I'm not talking a whole year or even a month. On a weekly basis, you do this 5-minute adjustment, and you'll notice that that week is gonna feel completely different, regardless of what's going on the external level. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
high five.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We are out of time. I think we could have continued this conversation. I do want to just ask you in summary, right? Can you just summarize how this pivot was a step forward for you? I mean, we just always love to ask that at the end, just to get a little summary for our listeners.
The biggest thing in hindsight is I realized I went from having success to being sovereign. And I had success on paper, but I wasn't successful in my life. And so the sovereignty is what shifted. And once I'm in sovereignty, I'm in my own internal power, making decisions in alignment, moving in alignment. And so there was a big difference. Like, I had to have this collapse to realize the success on paper, the image, the identity wasn't actually embodied. And because it wasn't embodied, it actually wasn't truth for me. But when I shifted to living in my own energy and from a place of sovereignty, that gave me the clarity to move forward, regardless of the circumstances of life. I'm now moving in alignment in my own frequency, in my own energy. And so, and also just like realizing that you have success with sovereignty, it's just anchored in embodied success, which feels safer in my system because I'm not afraid of losing it because it's who I am versus what I'm trying to go get. And that has given me so much energy back because I'm not chasing, I'm living.
Whoa, it's fantastic. Just really fantastic. I think the sustainability of that state that you're speaking into is precious. I remember us bonding over the word sovereignty and agency as opposed to control, because we were learning about what does it mean to be in control of my life? What does it mean to be controlling? And as we were unpacking that, these two words came up as, if I am in sovereignty and if I'm aware that I have agency. And again, this is not about like not dealing with what needs attention or excusing behavior that is not excusable or not dealing with injustices or you know serious situations, but
Mm-hmm.
this, you're talking about personal power at its best and at its most sustainable. Thank you. What an encouraging conversation.
Yeah.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much, Heather, for being with us today. I got so many little nuggets that I hope our listeners did as well, and I'm sure they did. So thank you again so much for being here today, for sharing your pivot, your amazing story, and we can't thank you enough. So thank you, and to all of our listeners, thank you again for listening to us, and we will see you. We'll be back in a couple weeks with our next episode. And remember, if you have a pivot, step into it.